Bismillah. Welcome back, Zoo Crew. So, you've all probably heard this saying, don't argue with idiots because they will bring you down to their level and then beat you with experience. So, I think another interesting take on this is don't hang out with people who choose comfort over growth, right? Because it's very easy to say, yeah, I want to grow as a person. But the reality is, most people would rather stay comfortable than grow, right? And they would rather you stay comfortable with them than grow. Because growing and facing yourself is a very hard thing to do. And changing is a very hard thing to do, right? Most people, as much as they can claim, yeah, I want to change or I want to grow and I want to reach my full potential, the reality is they don't have whatever it takes, right? And the more I kind of get realigned and recalibrate in my life, the more I realize this is the sad case for most people. And this is why I always choose to distance myself and isolate myself, because I'll get on a path where I'm pursuing my dreams, my goals, my ambitions, but then the people who surround me are not able to keep up with me. So I end up shrinking, right? I end up lowering my standards to make the other person feel comfortable. And then sure enough, like I'll end up in a state of like depression or anxiety because internally I know how much more I should be doing and how much more capable I am. And just choosing to be lazy is not a way to live, right? And look, there's nothing wrong with choosing comfort and not being willing to grow or change because it requires a lot of courage, right? It's a scary thing to hold yourself accountable. It's a scary thing to reflect on yourself and your life and take full responsibility for where you are, right? And it's very easy to just get overwhelmed by the whole notion of like trying to change, especially when you try and change multiple things at the same time, or you haven't done like your own internal work, right? And I'll give you an example. So both of my parents outsource their emotions to other people. They don't know how to regulate their own emotions, right? And this is something that I learned. It's a learned behavior that I got from them, right? And I'm only just becoming aware of this given how my last few weeks went, right? I've always known that they don't know how to regulate their own emotions and they'll outsource it to somebody else, but I didn't realize that I do the same thing, right? So the way your parents are, you will end up repeating that same cycle in your life until you can sit and reflect and look at yourself in the mirror, right? However, most people will avoid doing this because they can't carry the weight of the shame, right? They can't carry the weight of the guilt. And then they get stuck in this cycle or this pattern, and then it keeps repeating over and over, generation to generation, right? And then this is the thing, right? You can't change something until you know what it is you need to change, right? And let's say if we're talking about habits, you have to really collect enough data to figure out, okay, what am I doing on a day-to-day basis? How am I spending my day? Where's my time going, right? Then you can figure out, okay, these are the habits that are propelling me forward. These are the habits that are detracting me in life, right? Or holding me back. And then you can cut those, but really you can't cut habits, right? You have to replace habits. So let's say if you want to quit smoking, you replace smoking with going for a walk and chewing gum, right? Let's say you want to quit playing video games. You can't just quit that. You have to replace it with something else. So you could replace it with reading, or you could replace it with learning a new language. You could replace it with a different hobby like photography, right? Or creating videos. So you can't just get rid of a bad habit. You have to replace it with a better habit, right? So instead of eating chips, you eat berries. Instead of eating junk food, you eat clean food, right? Obviously, some of these things are harder to do than others, but the point being, you won't grow or reach your full potential in life if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, if you're not willing to confront yourself, right? And at the end of the day, you have no one to blame but yourself, right? because most people, as much as like they can ask for help, they aren't willing to help themselves, right? And I saw this happen so much in the coaching space. People would spend 2 grand, 4 grand, buy a course, never even open it. They would drop 15K, 30K on coaching, never show up for the first call, right? It's like the person who goes and buys the cake mix, but then never makes the cake, right? And what I'm realizing now is all of that time and energy that I was investing into other people, I should have been investing into myself, right? And all this got me was being hurt in the end and like having resentment, right? Because I'm spending my time, energy, and money on people who don't want to invest in themselves. So how can I expect them to invest in me, right? And then that just kind of builds this like resentment towards the person, or you have these like expectations. But at the end of the day, somebody who's not willing to grow, like you can't expect shit from them, because the reality is like they're just going to complain about the state of their life. They're going to complain about the state of their health or whatever it is in life. They're going to be perpetual victims, and they're never going to actually grow, right? There's so many people who pretend to have like a growth mindset, but what do? They buy a book, they don't use it. They buy a journal, they don't fill it in, right? They sign up for a course, they don't go to the course. And they go to therapy, but then they don't ever actually implement any of the things they learn in therapy. And for the most part, therapy does not work if the person is not willing to actually be honest with themselves, right? Because they won't be honest with the therapist, and now you're just wasting everybody's time, you know? And there's a study that Cornell University did, and the biggest regret most people had in their life was not failed relationships. It was not money they didn't make. It wasn't like any of these things. The biggest regret people had was not going after their dreams. It was not taking risks or betting on themselves, right? And your biggest enemy or your greatest enemy in life is yourself. You are the only person who's really holding you back, right? You can try and blame it on external factors. You can blame it on mental health, physical health, other people. But the reality is you are your own greatest enemy, right? And until you can like win the battle in your mind, until you can master yourself, you will never be able to master life, right? And life really is a game. So you have to look at it as though it's like an experiment or a test, right? You're here to collect data. You're here to try different things, gather the information, and then make a better decision the next time around, right? And this even goes beyond just like trying to succeed in life. You could be curious about something and then dive into it outside of being like, okay, like I need to make money from this, or this needs to be my career, or any of these things, right? Until you feed your own curiosity, you won't ever learn how the world works. You won't be able to see patterns. You won't be able to synthesize information, right? And I'm not saying just dabble, because a lot of people right now, like being a polymath or like a Renaissance man has become like a very trendy kind of thing, or like, yeah, literally it's just like a trend, right? But all of these people, they just dabble a little bit. So like they dip their toes into one thing, now they dip their toes into something else, they dip their toes into something else. But to be a true polymath, you have to have depth, right? You have to have knowledge in multiple areas, multiple realms. You have to have expertise in multiple areas, right? And at that point, you will be able to look at life through different lenses and connect dots that most people cannot connect, right? So for myself, when I'm talking about business, I can now relate it to video games. I can relate it to anime. I can relate it to history. I can relate it to politics, economics, finance, right? And it's because I have so much depth in all of these categories. However, as a human, you need to constantly be growing. And how do you find more things to grow with? By having curiosity, right? So something that's been in my head for at least 2 years now is buying a nice camera and then pursuing photography or videography. However, I would just end up spending that money on other people, or I would just talk myself out of doing it, right? And then at the end, it's like I invested this money in all these other people when I really should have just invested it into myself, right? And like enjoyed my own life. because the only person you can really rely on or that's gonna be with you forever is yourself. There's nobody else, because you come into this world alone, you're gonna leave alone, right? So now, like, I probably will at some point go and get a nice camera and then like level up my YouTube journey, right? Then I can film from two angles and like use the Pocket as like my vlogging camera. Who knows, you know? And I don't know where that path will lead me. Same thing with this YouTube channel. I didn't know where it's going to lead me or where this is going to go, but it's just like, let me just put myself out there. Let me just create and let me see what happens, right? And again, this is what I talked about in the literal first video is you have to figure out, first of all, like what you want to do and then act like the person who's already got that, right? This is the key to manifesting the life you want. So you could, let's say in terms of like being healthy, right? So let's say you want to have 15% body fat. How does the person who has 15% body fat operate on a day-to-day basis? They wake up at 5 a.m. They go to the gym. They eat like at least 1 gram of protein per body weight. They are actively exercising. They're walking more than they're driving, right? They're taking the stairs. It's all of these little things. Like you already know this is how these people operate. All you have to do is start operating in the same way, and then sooner or later you'll get the same result, right? And this is the thing, like humans, we just overcomplicate life, and it's really that simple. You have to be in order to become, right? You don't become and then be. It doesn't work like that. So all in all, and then look, like even let's talk about like this whole notion we were discussing yesterday about like quality over quantity, right? You can like people get trapped in this notion of like, oh, I need to optimize my life. And it's like, pause, you don't need to optimize your life. You need to build momentum first, then you can optimize, right? So what I did when I started this YouTube channel, I was posting clips. I was posting like 10 clips a day at least. Like I don't remember the exact number, but then I got to a point where it's like, hey, now I can optimize and figure out which times are going to work, right? And this is the thing, if you're like me, if you have ADHD or like you're just somebody who's not neurotypical, you will have issues with motivation or discipline, right? And this is why it's important to build momentum before you optimize. So for me, like going to the gym is not something I enjoy doing. If I could just hang out all day, that's what I would do, right? It's not like something that's just easy, like, okay, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym. Once I've built momentum and now I'm like in the routine, then yeah, it becomes easier to maintain. But how do you get that initial momentum, right? It's not a discipline problem or a motivation problem. It's just that your brain is wired for instant gratification. It needs that quick dopamine hit. That's why it's so easy to open your phone and just be doom scrolling for hours, right? Because boom, you're getting that instant dopamine. So the way you can do this and like actually build momentum is now, because look, like if I want to get in shape, I know that's going to take time. I know that's going to be a long process. It means I have to like eat clean. It means I have to meal prep. It means I have to work out. But like, even if I'm going to the gym 5 times a week, it's going to be a few months before you start seeing real results, right? And that's how you get unmotivated. That's how you fall off course. However, if we can reframe this and now it's like, okay, I'm not, like I know the results will come eventually, but I'm going to the gym to get that initial like burst of endorphins, because there's never been like a time where I've worked out that I felt worse or like I felt shitty, right? I generally like after I work out, like I'll feel good. So now I'm telling myself, okay, look, it doesn't matter like how hard we work out or how often we work out. We're just going to work out to get that release of endorphins, right? Now you do that enough times, you've built the momentum. Now you have the motivation and the discipline, and then you can go and optimize from there. Now you can worry about the diet. Now you can worry about what kind of workouts you're doing, right? Until you get that first momentum going, it's going to feel impossible to start, right? So you have to figure out how your brain works and then rewire your brain slowly. And this is the same thing with relationships, right? You can heal yourself and your traumas 60% of the way on your own, but that last 40%, you cannot like heal or rewire unless you're in a relationship, right? Because the way you are as a single person versus the way you are in a relationship is two very different things, right? You have to learn how to be with another person. You have to learn what triggers them or what about them triggers you, right? You have to learn how they cope with their emotions. Do they process their emotions? Do they feel their emotions, or do they just shut down and run away, right? And there's no right or wrong in this whole thing. It's a matter of understanding. It's a matter of being willing to grow and being willing to choose the other person, right? And there's like this quote or saying where it's like everybody comes into a relationship with baggage. You either are going to trip over each other's baggage or you're going to help each other unpack it, right? So you need to pick somebody who can like help you unpack your baggage and you can help them unpack their baggage, right? Because you'll notice in your own life when you hang out with people who are not interested in kind of growing or being the best version of themselves, you will be exhausted every time you hang out with them, right? And if you find people who you can just be yourself with and you don't have to worry about like impressing these people, you'll notice that, okay, yeah, I enjoy hanging out with these people, right? Because most people are just wearing a mask. You're not getting the real version of them. They're playing a character, they're playing a role. And again, this even ties into the whole way social media and content is right now, because AI has made it so easy for everybody to create content that is just overrun with AI slop and like brain rot garbage, right? And the thing AI can't replicate is the human experience, right? And I think this is why my videos were like, I'm talking from like my life experience do better than, and like where I'm able to relate it to other things are doing like do better than things where it's just like generic content that like an AI could come up with, right? And really none of my stuff has been generic at all. But the point I'm making is you have to be like, you have to bring the human element, right? And don't get me wrong, like coming on to this, like just hitting record and talking about all the crazy shit that goes on in my life. Do you think that's easy for me? Right? Especially because like I curated such a clean image online, especially on Instagram. Like I built this whole persona. So like now collapsing all of that and being like authentically myself is not a very easy thing to do, but I had to overcome my fear. And the biggest lesson that I've learned in this whole like 90-day journey has been most people let fear control them. And they're not even aware that fear is running their lives, right? And look, like you need to be willing to take a risk because everything you want in life is on the other side of that risk, right? It's courage is the other side of fear. And you can either have courage or you can be a coward and let fear control you and then be regretting the what ifs for the rest of your life, right? And look, sometimes you're going to take a risk and it's not going to work out, right? So in that scenario, you gained the wisdom, you gained knowledge, and now you can recalibrate. And if it works out, God bless, like you're going to be happy. And like a good analogy that I saw is when you're driving and you're using GPS, right? And you miss a turn. The GPS is not telling you, oh, I made a mistake. The GPS is saying rerouting, right? So you have to look at your life in the same way. You're going to fuck up. You're going to make mistakes. And that is okay. That's a part of the journey. The thing is, you don't get stuck. You have to just reroute. You got to keep moving, right? It's when you stop moving that you lose the game. And really, like when you stop moving, it's the same thing as being dead. So as long as you're alive, you have 1,000,001 chances to go after anything and everything you want, right? And look, this is the thing. You can have anything you want in life, but you can't have everything. So you have to pick very carefully, right? This is opportunity cost. Let's say you spend 2 years in a relationship with somebody and you can see all of their red flags clearly and you keep pursuing this thinking that it's going to work. Eventually it's going to work, right? Because you believe more in their potential than what the reality is showing you, right? And look, in some cases it will work, but it only works in a place where you don't need anything from that person, right? There's a difference between wanting somebody and needing somebody. If you need somebody, you will get destroyed. If you want somebody, that's true love, right? And again, it has to go both ways. If both people are willing to choose the other person, both people want to be together, both people want to work on their relationship, things will work out. It can't just be one person carrying the whole fucking relationship, because then guess what? You are not in a relationship. You're just dealing with a parasite. You're dealing with somebody who's extracting resources from you, time, energy, emotional labor, etc. And like, that's going to hold you back in life. And you don't want to end up resenting that person. So you need to look out for yourself. You need to set boundaries. You need to maintain your frame, right? Because like, this is another analogy that I heard that I thought was really good. Men are the island and women are boats, right? So you build your island in a way that you would want to live. You want to have your island set up so that if no boat comes, you're still enjoying your life, right? Because let's say you build your life around this boat and now the boat decides to leave the dock and go to a different island. Then what? Like, you built your whole life for this person who's not even there anymore. And like, it's going to suck, but like, you fucked up, you know? So build your life the way you want to live. Don't build your life for anybody else. And if like a boat comes, let the boat come, but do not get attached, because when you get attached, that's when you lose your purpose. When you are a man and you fall in love, that's when you get weak. That's when your weakness shows up, because in most cases, you'll be willing to like burn your whole life down for this other person to keep them warm. And when push comes to shove, they will bounce. They won't be willing to do the same for you, right? And the sad reality is this goes even beyond relationships. Most friendships, when push comes to shove, you'll see people's true colors, right? They're like 80% of people, when you're down, they're going to be snickering behind your back. They're going to be gossiping about you, or they're going to come and kick you even more, right? Because they want to see you fail. They want to see you go spiral down. You're going to have that select 20%. They're going to see you're going through some shit. They're going to offer advice. They're going to pick you up. They're going to listen to what you have to say. And they may agree with it, they may not agree with it, but at the end of the day, they're going to be there for you. They're going to support you through whatever it is you're going through, right? So unless you can find that 20% of people, it's better to just be alone, right? All you need is yourself and God. Everything else is secondary. You don't need any other people. And like, it's just going to distract you and pull you off your purpose. Because, and like, especially when it comes to women, right? That's like the most destructive thing for a man. Like I guess I shouldn't say that, because like going through this whole shit like with Mina caused me to grow so much. Like, it forced me to level up. It forced me to like reflect and really kind of understand myself. So like, it is what it is, you know, like, she's gone and I don't really think she'll come back. And I'm at a point where I don't really care, because I knew in my heart, like, what I felt. I knew it was true. I knew I was genuine. And really, maybe God is saving me from like destroying my life for some person who couldn't appreciate it, right? Or couldn't see how much I was doing for them. Because look, relationships and sales is very much the similar thing, right? In sales, your day ends and nothing carries over to the next day. So you sold 10 cars today. Well, guess what? You're back at zero the next day. A relationship is the same way. It doesn't matter how much money you spend, how like easy you make their life, how much time and energy you spend. Literally the next day, it starts at zero again, right? So don't spend your time and energy on somebody else. Spend it on yourself. Get to a position where you have so much abundance in your life that you're not even phased, right? It's like, you could be the guy hanging out at the tree and now an apple falls because it's rotten, and now you pick up that apple, right? Or, and like, now you're just waiting for apples to fall. Or you could be the guy who builds the fucking ladder, climbs up the tree, and picks the apple he wants, right? So it's a difference of mindset. And like, don't get this twisted. Don't just think like I'm talking shit about Mina and like calling her a rotten apple. That's not the case at all. I'm just using this as a metaphor, right? Because again, like I already said, like I wouldn't have become who I am today had I not met her and gone through all of this, you know? So regardless of if we end up together or not, like that's in God's hands. And like I will always wish her well because like she played a huge role in my life, you know? There's two women in my life who have played a huge role in my life and helped me become who I am today. And I will never have anything bad to say about these people, you know? So, yeah, I guess the point of today was you need to build momentum before you can optimize. Treat your life like an experiment. Cultivate your sense of curiosity. Try a bunch of different shit. Focus on yourself. Invest in yourself. And stay away from people who choose comfort over growth, right? Because when somebody's choosing comfort over growth, what they're really choosing is their ego. They want to protect their ego, they want to protect their pride, and they want to run away from accountability, right? Because that's easier to do. And changing is very hard. The only thing you can control is yourself. So win the battle in your mind, master your life, master yourself and then master your life, right? Everything else is noise. So cut out the distractions, get realigned, recalibrate, and remember, your number one enemy is yourself.